Hi everyone! WBPP has a new update, and because I claim to have a definitive guide of this script, I guess I have to keep up. I'm on the hook to keep up with creating updates as we go along. Now this particular update has a couple of major headlines, and I'm going to demonstrate in this section what they are, as well as some other cool features. So once I show you the big news, don't leave the video. There are some other cool features that you don't want to miss as well. So one of the reasons why I haven't updated yet is because the data that's involved here, it's one-shot color camera data, is of the kind that I actually don't have access to. So I asked for some data from a kind member of AdamBlockStudios. They provided me with some data that is of the kind that demonstrates the cool thing. So what's the news? The news is that for people that have one-shot color camera sensors, in the past, you will align an image. When you have a color image, you would basically disregard the color information, and you would align one image, the lightness of that image, to all the other images, aligning them, and that would be fine as long as all the colors themselves within that particular image, a single image, they were themselves aligned. But sometimes you can have data where that's not true. So for example, if you have data that there are strong distortions or aberrations, chromatic aberrations in the data. For example, if you're using a Schmidt-Cass, you can get towards the edges due to coma and other effects, kind of these radial aberrated chromatic stars, that the colors on one side will be different than the color on the other. You can also see a similar effect with atmospheric dispersion. If you're looking low in the sky, the atmosphere disperses the light in a wavelength dependent way, and you get kind of a smear of light or a little rainbow of light for stars. And if you're doing one-shot color camera imagery, there is no way, at least in the past, there was no way to disentangle that, but now you can. So the way it works, so this is the headline, and this is what I'm going to demonstrate, that you actually, in the reference frame that you pick not just the lightness, but you pick a color channel. In this case, it's the green channel. It's the channel that's brightest because it has the most pixels. And you align all channels to that image. So you align within the image itself, the red and the blue channel to that green channel, but then you do that for all of the other images. So now that you're aligning all of those color channels together, any of these aberrations and distortions and things, they too will get aligned in those color spaces. And hopefully you don't have those fringing of colors at the edges of stars and all of that. It's wonderful if that's the kind of issue that you have. So that's one of the major headlines. And then there are a couple of other cool things that I'll want to show that carry on a theme of WBPP. So the first thing I'd like to show you is what the announcement looked like on the PixInsight official forum. That's where we'll find the announcement and a wonderful description of everything. Roberto, the developer here, always puts together a fantastic and thorough description of all of the changes that have been made, and he has some wonderful screenshots here. The big headline is this part here that says the new separate RGB channel workflow, and that's what I'm going to be demonstrating. There are a couple of other features that are nice. Now there's a method to be able to do cosmetic correction on different binning of images that wasn't possible easily before, as well as some other improvements. So I'm going to be showing a few things, though this is pretty comprehensive here and authoritative, of course. I'm going to show a few things that are in addition to some of the screenshots that are on this page. So that'll be part of this video. Let's go back to PixInsight. I'm going to exit out of this. No, I don't need to. I just wanted to show you something. I've just entered the script here. Whenever you load WBPP, one of the things that I think sometimes confuses people, if they want to show someone else what the configuration looks like, and they'll make a screenshot, or perhaps they want to see where the settings are. They look at the screen, they say, I don't see any settings at all. Where are the settings for lights and things like that? You have to remember to click on a group in order to see the settings. Or to take a picture, if you're going to save a screenshot to show the configuration of things, you have to click on a particular group so that you can see the settings of that group. So I just wanted to mention that. That's something that sometimes confuses people. With this particular data set, again, it was a courtesy of one of the members of AdamBlockStudios, and he provided master frames, darks, well, he actually had biases. I didn't load them. Darks and flats here, but even there, I don't need the the short dark that was to calibrate the flats, because the flat's already calibrated. It's a master flat. So really all I need here is a master dark, a master flat, and the light frames. And that's what I have. So this was not necessary, but it's loaded. It's okay. And this data loaded exactly how we would expect it to load. It recognized that this is color data. So you can see that we have the color indicated here, CFA images. And we can see the settings here. And it's the settings that I want to talk about a little bit, because one of the things I want to highlight here is that there is a debayer method that you can choose. There's a debayer method here called Superpixel as well as VNG, and they do give you different answers. So I want to talk about that a little bit, about the differences in those two methods. But I also obviously want to highlight this new thing in terms of it's basically dealing with registration. That's what this is about. And registration is a post-process that is part of WBPP. So the pre-processing is what you actually see here on this screen. That is taking data and calibrating it with biases, darks, and flats. The post-process, if you click on that tab, this is a new tab, you can see over on the right a list of post-processes. And you'll see that basically everything else is considered a post-process. Cosmetic correction is. Most importantly, we have image registration and image integration here as well. Those are post-processing. So I'm going to say by default, by the initial setup, these are not checked. If you wanted to use any of these, of course, you need to set that up in the appropriate tab, like lights. Here, I'm just going to show the output of what the registration output looks like. I could have WBPP continue and give me the combined images of everything, but that's not necessary. I've already run everything here, and then I can show you combining things with image integration just very quickly on the fly. So let's say that the only thing I'm going to be doing here, because this is what the workflow involves, I'm just going to be using image registration of the light frames. That means now when I come back to the post-process screen, you can see that image registration is checked because we have decided this is an element that we want to do. Now, currently, I have things here configured so that when the images are aligned, this is the key, and this is the way it has been done until today, really, is that the images are aligned based on the lightness from one of these one-shot color camera images to another. The grayscale images are aligned. And that doesn't have anything to do with the different independent color channels. So at the end of the day, the output of WBPP would be all the one-shot color camera images, all in this, they would be debayered, they'd be registered and debayered, but all in the same folder together. However, and so we'll look at that result. However, we can now do something different, and this is where it's located. Here in the post-process configuration, we can now select separate RGB channels and watch what happens over on the left. Now you'll see that the output is not going to be a set of 62 images, but it's going to be 62 times 3. We're going to get a set of images for each of the color channels. And these color channels will be aligned with respect to one another, which is really cool. So the reason why that's cool is because there are certain kinds of aberrations that you can get, distortions, that some telescopes might have, for example. This data comes from a Schmidt-Cassegrain telescope, where stars near the edges of the field, because of distortion, get color fringing. Basically, one side of the star is a different color than the other side of the star. So this is something you want to fix, and this method will do that for us. Another way that you can get data that you would like the colors to combine that otherwise in the past would have been difficult is if you have atmospheric dispersion. If you're looking at an object low in the sky, the atmosphere smears all of those different colors of light into little rainbows. So a star is no longer a nice round whitish thing. It gets spread into its little rainbow of colors for the same reason sunsets are red, but you'll see a green flash on the top and a red rim on the bottom and all that kind of stuff. That's atmospheric dispersion. So this method now, what it's going to do when we choose a reference frame is we're going to pick one channel. It's going to be the green channel of the frame that we pick, and then it will align all other channels in each of these other frames, these other images, to that one color. and that's going to get rid of all these different effects. You will not have the fringing and color on stars, hopefully. Those will all be aligned, and so that will get rid of a lot of weird colors and halos, multicolored halos anyway, around stars, because it can have all kinds of weird radial dependencies and other things when you have a distortion plus other aberrations in effect. So this is going to be a wonderful thing, and I'll demonstrate that it actually does work with the data that I received here as a wonderful courtesy. Now, let me come back and mention this other thing, which deals with the, if we come back here, look at the lights, which deals with the debayer method over on this side of things, where we choose how the images, when it comes time to debayer them, how that happens. When you use VNG, basically what you're doing is interpolating between the different pixel values. And that maintains the size of the image. So if you started with a 4,000 pixel image, as this data is, then at the end of the day, all of your other channels, red, green, and blue, are going to end up being 4,000 pixels too. Now that might not seem, that seems like that's normal, right? But it actually isn't normal. That's a special thing, VNG is, this interpolation. Because you don't actually have 4,000 red pixels. You only have half that many pixels, truly reddish pixels on your sensor. And the same is true for blue. Now green you have more because you have two greens in the Bayer matrix. But the point is that if I literally extracted just all the red pixels and made an image out of it with no interpolation, I'm going to get a smaller image. But there is some benefit in doing it. It gives you a different answer. And so I just want to highlight the fact, and I'll be showing this, that you can choose Superpixel, which is kind of the extraction without interpolation, the extraction of all of those pixels, put those together, make that your channel image that you're aligning in this new method, as I say, and you can get better results when it comes to noise and rejection of outlying values and all kinds of things. So something to consider. It is a different route to go rather than VNG. So let's continue to set this up then. When we do lights and we say we're going to do registration by clicking here to do the image registration, we also need to select a reference frame. Now we can have it automatically pick by selecting the mode to be auto, or pick a frame, or we can select one, and that's what I did here. I literally selected the first frame in the list and I said let that be the reference. These frames are all fairly similar. And then I have an output directory, of course. Now I'm not going to actually press the button here because all we're interested in is the output and how it differs depending upon whether we use the older method of aligning and now the newer method of aligning. So I'm now going to actually show you what it looks like to combine those images actually. Let me show you what this output looks like so you can see the difference. Again, pay particular attention to this screen. When we had the, I'm going to call it the old method now. The old method, we would output just 62 frames, and they're just debayered images, not being separated into the individual colors. That's what I'm going to combine first, because I want to show you what it looks like to have these kind of strange colored stars. It's pretty subtle in this particular data case, but it's exactly the kind of thing that can happen, and it's all, in this case, just due to optics. And then, of course, I'm going to show you what the separated RGB channels looks like, and then you can get both. You can output both types of data if you want all at once, but I basically did it individually so I could see what was going on. So let's see that in action here. If we go to not this directory but this one, you can see I now have 3 folders, and the folder that I want to show you is the regular method, and within the regular method you can see the registered images, but it's the debayered images because they're registered and then debayered here. You can see there's just one folder, and this one folder has all 62. That's what I'm about to combine for you. Whereas if you look in the other folder, either VNG or whatever here, let's go ahead and take this step by step. If we look under registered, we'll see 3. And look at the size of the image. This is one of the channels. Look at the size of the image here. You'll see based on this image size, it's quite large, right? 45 megabytes here. Whereas if we go to the other method, which is the Superpixel method, look at the difference in the size. If I go to registered here, look at the difference of the size of the images. Here now we have a smaller number, right? These are smaller files because now we're only combining just those red, or whatever the color this is. What is this? Blue. All the blue pixels together. So it's a much smaller image size. And that can have some benefits, which I'll show you in just a moment. Okay, so here we go. We're going to open up image integration, which is here. And all I'm going to do is just combine all of these files. And this is the regular method. So I come here to debayed, and we should see that these, oh, actually it's the registered. They need to be registered, Adam. Here we are. The registered data, there, debayed registered, yes. Open these up, and we'll keep everything just normal here. So we have additive with scaling, noise evaluation. I'm going to use my favorite thing for the heck of it. And we'll just keep these settings each time. So that's fine. I'll make this 0.1, and we'll make this 1. These things I explained at AdamBlockStudios, so if you're not familiar with what I'm doing there, I have a video on that. All right, so we're combining this image. Okay, so here's the result. We can see the rejection looks very typical. I can see stars and things had parts rejected. That looks fine. So here's what the image looks like initially. Now we can do an unlinked auto stretch here. I think that's what I've done. And if we go probably to the edges of the frame, and we don't need to display it quite as bright, you can see, yeah, maybe this will show up here. Can you see how the left edge is red, and then the right edge, I mean, it looks green here, but once you remove all the green, once you've done color calibration properly, it's more of a blue on the right side and red on the left side. But watch what happens if we go all the way to the other side. You can now see there's red on the right side, and the blue is on the left side. That's opposite. So it has this radial thing going on, and if we look at the tops and the bottoms of the frame, we get, again, different things going on here. Again, here's some blue on the left and then maybe a little red on the right. All of that is because of this chromatic aberration of this particular system. And the question becomes, can we get a different result if we employ this new technique? And that's, of course, what we want to demonstrate. So let's go ahead and do this in a number of ways. I'm going to go ahead and run PCC on this data so that we have a color calibrated image. And then we'll do the same thing on the other data so that we know that we're getting the same result. We can compare the same result. So this is what photometric color calibration comes up with, which looks fine. Go ahead and do this and this. And now we have a color calibrated image. And indeed, you can see kind of a, zoom in here, kind of a one fringe of color on one side and another fringe of color on the other. And that changes depending upon where in the frame you're looking. Maybe now I can display the image not quite as bright, so it's easier to see. Yeah, now that makes it maybe a little bit easier to see the color fringing that's going on. So here we'll say old method. And let's combine, let's do the new method, but we'll look at the VNG because the images will be exactly the same size. So what do? Well, what you've got to do is combine the red data, the green data, and the blue data. You've got to make 3 images and then make that color picture with channel combination. So I come back to here, and we have the new method. And if I go into registered, let's see, which one is this? This is the blue? Yeah. Let's do the blue first. Now, this will only be seconds for you. I'm going to keep all the settings the same, so I'm not going to change any of the settings here. Just combine it. And then I'll do the same thing in the other 3 channels. I'll come back with channel combination. All right, just stepping in here to show you that, I have 3 images now. I have a blue, a green, and a red. So now I can just go to Process, Channel Combination. and choose those images. So yeah, blue, green, and red. Create our color picture. It's going to look funky again in that same way. We can turn off, do that. It looks very similar to before, so I'm going to just run PCC on it. In fact, the same settings should be fine. So I'll be back when that's done, and then we can compare finally, and we can see what this RGB method, the benefit it's giving us. Okay, so here we go. Now what we get to do is the following. We get to take, well, let's call this something. This is going to be our new method VNG. And now I'm not sure how the screen stretch will work here. I can try, but I'm not convinced it'll be the same. So let's just try. No, I don't think so. So I'm going to approximate a similar screen stretch once I've put these two in the same regions here. That might be close. Let's blink and see how close I am. Click here. Maybe that one's a little darker. So we'll go a little bit on the darker side. Let's zoom in more so we can actually see this example star. And here we have a before and an after. Not only do we get the benefit of kind of minimizing the fringing that's going on, it's more equally colored, if you will, but also the star actually seems to shrink a little, and that's mostly because you're now aligning those colors. We're near the edge of the chip here. This is the very edge, right? Because that's where the distortion is the greatest. In the center, the effect isn't as, spectacular. But when you get away from the center, you have stars that look like this, and that's a cool benefit. So I think this is a really great thing. I actually would be more excited about this if I was ever using a one-shot color camera and imaging something that was very low in the sky, because atmospheric dispersion is always kind of an issue. And there are some beautiful southern objects, at least in the northern hemisphere, where if you were using a one-shot color camera to try to image them, you run into this problem. But here, we can now take advantage of this kind of automatic way of aligning through image registration, star alignment, aligning those channels. You can still do this on your own by extracting and aligning, but now it kind of takes advantage of all this mechanism to make what are optimal images. I think it's really great.